The war cries echoing across the galaxy had brought an end to millions of years of peace. Humanity found itself facing an enemy larger than any before, the Verican Empire. Known for their technological superiority and ruthless strategies, this race was prepared to unleash any form of brutality to subdue the galaxy. The Allied forces struggled to defend against the relentless assaults of the Verican armies, forced to retreat on every front. But just when humanity was on the brink of despair, an unexpected hand was extended by an old enemy, the Abruzzi. The Abruzzi were a warrior race that had long been enemies of humanity. The losses from past conflicts still lingered in the memories of both sides. However, the threat posed by the Verican had united these former foes under a common purpose. Though neither side fully trusted the other, the future of the galaxy depended on this alliance. Commander Nevin Rook, advancing towards the designated meeting point on the battlefield to speak with the Abruzzi leader Aldresh, was filled with conflicting emotions. Aldresh, with his armor-clad body and sharp features, looked far from human. The rage and determination hidden in his deep eyes clearly marked him as a warrior. Nevin took a deep breath and spoke. "Aldresh, we agree on the necessity of this alliance. But I still can't fully trust you or your intentions," Nevin said, locking eyes with the Abruzzi leader. "At the end of this war, the fate of the galaxy will be decided. I won't forgive betrayal." Aldresh looked at him calmly. "I am in the same position, human. I haven't forgotten what happened in the past either. But the Verican is a threat neither your strength nor ours can defeat alone. It's either alliance or death. The choice is yours." Suppressing his inner distrust, Nevin nodded. "Then we fight together. But if I sense any treachery—" Aldresh interrupted before Nevin could finish his sentence. "In that case, you won't only face the wrath of the Verican but of the Abruzzi as well." The first phase of the war began under the shadow of this uneasy agreement. As the Verican armies seized star systems one by one, humans and Abruzzi combined their forces and launched a counter-offensive. The first target was the planet Theta 7, where the Verican had a significant base. From the bridge of his warship, Nevin gazed at Theta 7's blue atmosphere. Verican ships hovered in the planet's orbit like a massive wall. "They're all here. We can't wait for them to come to us. Are the Alliance fleets ready?" "Ready, Commander. The Abruzzi ships are standing by alongside us," his lieutenant said, displaying the tactical map on the screen. The combined human and Abruzzi ships looked small compared to the overwhelming numbers of Verican vessels, but Nevin stood firm. "Our target is the main base. We don't stop until we break through their defenses. Give the attack order to all fleets." At Nevin's command, human and Abruzzi ships surged forward. The first moments of the battle were a sea of chaos. Laser cannons and plasma rounds lit up the void, creating a deadly dance of bright lights in space. Both sides unleashed their full might, but the Verican ships, equipped with advanced defense systems and lethal weapons, put up a fierce resistance against the Alliance forces. "We're taking heavy losses on the left flank," a subordinate shouted amidst the explosions echoing across the bridge. "The Abruzzi ships are pulling back." Nevin clenched his jaw, assessing the situation. "Don't let them retreat. We can't take this without them. Send reinforcements to the Abruzzi fleets. Commander Rook, Abruzzi leader Aldresh is requesting to speak with you." Nevin looked at the screen, opening the channel to Aldresh. The Abruzzi leader's face was twisted in anger. "You've pushed our ships to the front, but you're not providing support. Is this how this alliance works?" "Now is not the time for this argument, Aldresh," Nevin said, trying to keep his composure. "If we move together, we can win. You have to trust me right now." After a brief hesitation, Aldresh nodded. "One more chance. But if we lose this battle, I'll hold you personally responsible, Nevin Rook. Nevin smiled slightly and nodded. Then let's win. The attack on the Verikan defensive lines intensified with coordinated strategy. The Abruzzi ships followed the human vessels, striking at the enemy's weak points. Caught off guard by the unexpected maneuver, the Verikan ships began to fall back. The tide of battle was shifting. But just when victory seemed within reach, an unexpected reinforcement fleet appeared from behind the enemy lines. "What is this? We weren't expecting a fleet this size," a shocked officer exclaimed as the screen lit up with new Verikan ships, vastly outnumbering and outpowering the Alliance forces. "Pull back!" Nevin shouted, but it was too late. The Verikan ships launched a precise and deadly assault on the Alliance forces. Explosions dotted the black void of space, one after another. "It was a trap," Nevin muttered, staring blankly at the screen. The Verikan had lured the Alliance forces by feigning weakness. Now, they were determined to annihilate them. Nevin turned to Aldresh's image. The Abruzzi leader wore a similar expression of shock. "I thought they had betrayed us." "But the betrayal was within our own ranks," Aldresh growled, anger rising. "We need to find a way out, or we die here." Nevin clenched his teeth and nodded. "Yes, but we weren't prepared for this Verikan surprise. If we make it out of here, we might still have a chance to win this war." The first phase of the war ended with heavy losses. The Alliance forces had suffered a crushing blow from this treacherous Verikan attack. But Nevin and Aldresh were determined to uncover the truth behind the betrayal. The shadow of treachery loomed over the Alliance, leaving both sides with a hard lesson. After the Theta 7 battle, the Alliance forces had retreated and regrouped at Amaranth Base. It was one of the safest locations in this part of the galaxy, but Verikan's ruthless attacks left no one feeling truly secure. Nevin Rook stood in the command center of Amaranth Base, discussing the situation with Aldresh and the other Allied commanders. "We've lost too many ships," said Lieutenant Varro, leaning on the table. "If Verikan attacks again, we won't even be able to hold this base." Aldresh crossed his arms and grunted in agreement. Nevin Rook, Aldresh, and the other Allied leaders stared at the large screens displaying the massive Verikan fleet. The Verikan ships moved towards the base like deadly shadows. The screens were filled with red warning signals, signaling the approaching danger. Nevin gritted his teeth and leaned over the table. How did they gather this much strength in such a short time? Before we even finished repairs and reinforcements, they're already coming at us fully prepared. We've missed something. Suddenly, an alarm echoed through the room. Nevin quickly turned to the screen to review the status report. "The Verikan fleets are approaching. Activate all defense systems." Amaranth Base swiftly shifted to battle mode. Allied ships took their positions to defend against the enemy fleet approaching the base. Verikan ships, with their heavy armor and lethal weapons, radiated fear. The protective shields surrounding the base were not strong enough to withstand such an assault. "Shield levels at 60%, reported an officer. "At this rate, we won't last more than 10 minutes. Nevin clenched his jaw, eyes scanning the strategic map. "Divert all shield power towards the enemy ships. We need to push them back." Amaranth Base fought desperately against the intense firepower from the Verikan ships. Space was filled with explosions and energy beams. Abruzzi and human ships advanced towards the enemy lines, trying to force the Verikan ships to retreat. But the sheer number and strength of the Verikan fleet posed a significant challenge for the Alliance forces. Nevin turned to Aldresh to assess the situation. "We can't hold on any longer. We need to retreat." Aldresh tightened his jaw, shaking his head. "Retreat. This base is our last line of defense. If we lose it, the rest of the galaxy will fall. Nevin understood Aldresh's determination, but there was no point in further loss. This is a strategic retreat. Dying here won't help anyone. We'll pull back and regroup at another point. Just then, a loud explosion reverberated through the command center. The screen showed one of the Verikan ships delivering a massive blow to the base. A section of the base had been obliterated. Nevin couldn't tear his eyes away from the screen. "Order all ships to retreat. Now!" The Allied ships began to leave the base in coordinated movements. The Verikan ships, however, were relentless, maneuvering to cut off their escape routes. Human and Abruzzi pilots faced the toughest battle of their lives. Watching Allied ships be destroyed one by one further eroded their morale. Nevin stood on the bridge of his command ship, watching the battle unfold, struggling to control the anger building within him. The fact that Verikan had executed such a well-thought-out plan only strengthened the suspicion that there was a traitor in their ranks. There has to be an explanation for how prepared they are. We need to find the mole. Lieutenant Varro nodded, his expression full of concern. But how do we figure out who it is? We trusted everyone. Nevin took a deep breath, thinking hard. Trust. We don't have that luxury anymore, Lieutenant. But we have to expose this betrayal. If we don't, this war will be lost before it even truly begins. The shields are down to 50%, a lieutenant shouted. They're hitting the base directly. Our power reserves are almost depleted. Pull back the outer defense ships and divert all remaining power to the shields. Nevin ordered, his finger tracing the defense grid on the screen as he adjusted their plan. Let's show them our shields won't break that easily. The defense fleet regrouped closer to the base, firing relentlessly at the approaching Verikan ships. Energy beams and missiles danced through the void of space, creating deadly light shows. For a moment, the Verikan ships were forced to retreat. But soon, they reorganized and launched another attack, this time more coordinated than before. A Verikan cruiser struck a powerful blow to Amaranth Base's shields. The entire station shook, control panels sparking and exploding. Nevin barely managed to keep his balance. "What's the shield status?" "Down to 30%, sir. At this rate, they'll collapse in just a few minutes," a technician yelled. "We need to stop those ships before they get any closer," Aldresh growled. "Once the shields fall, we'll be defenseless." Nevin evaluated their options. Losing Amaranth Base meant the fall of the entire alliance. Send every remaining defense ship to the front line. We have to stop them before they get within striking distance of the base. Alliance ships surged forward, intercepting the Verikan forces. These vessels were manned by the bravest human and Abruzzi pilots, and as they clashed with the enemy, space lit up with explosions. The battle was intense, with both sides fighting for survival. Nevin sat in the command chair of his ship, watching the battle unfold. He gave firing orders while also coordinating the fleet's movements. Verikan ships, with their superior armor and firepower, were systematically destroying the Alliance's forces. Every destroyed ship felt like another wound to Nevin's heart. The central line is collapsing. The enemy is advancing on the base, a lieutenant shouted. Nevin stared at the screen, watching the Verikan ships rush toward the base. "Order all ships to retreat. We can't defend the base any longer. We have to pull back." Aldresh turned to Nevin, his face twisted in anger. "We're retreating? This was our last stronghold." "Not now, Aldresh," Nevin replied, eyes fixed on the advancing Verikan fleet. "We'll return, but for now we need to fall back." The Alliance fleet began a coordinated retreat, but the Verikan forces were relentless, cutting off escape routes and continuing their assault. Space was filled with explosions and energy beams. With every blast, the Alliance's morale sank further. Every ship that fell only reinforced the Verican's power and cruelty. Neven gritted his teeth and activated the communication channel. All ships, emergency retreat. This is an order. Abandon the base and head to the emergency coordinates. Amaranth Base erupted in a massive explosion, its wreckage scattered across space. Neven watched through the shaking windows of his ship, struggling to suppress the sorrow welling up inside him. Amaranth wasn't just a base. It was a symbol of the Alliance's unity and hope. "All ships are heading to the coordinates," a lieutenant reported, his voice trembling. Neven took a deep breath. "Take stock of our losses. We won't find peace until we've rooted out this betrayal." Aldresh stepped up beside him, his heavy footsteps echoing on the bridge. "This is a defeat, but it's not the end." Neven nodded, his gaze fixed on the screens where the Verican fleet hovered over the remains of Amaranth Base, as if savoring their victory. But this victory would be short-lived. Determination burned in Neven's eyes. "Yes, it's far from over. And when we find the traitor, we'll bring down not only Verican but them too." In the darkness of space, the small Alliance fleet sped away from their fallen base, driven by the same fury and resolve. This was a story of hope born from defeat, and the desire for vengeance. The war was far from finished. Neven Rook stood in the command room of the Alliance hideout, glaring at Captain Irinda. Irinda stood with his head bowed, a helpless figure weighed down not just by betrayal, but by the fate of an entire people. Neven took a deep breath. The loss of Amaranth Base, the ruthless attacks of the Verican, the Alliance growing weaker with each blow. They had finally uncovered the name behind it all. But things weren't going as expected. The massive Verican warship, the Dark Lancer, was speeding toward the Alliance's sanctuary at that very moment. The ship had crushed every defensive line in its path, now surrounding the hideout in a deadly blockade. Neven's throat tightened as he saw the colossal ship on the screens. How long could the sanctuary's shields hold? He had no idea. "Irinda, is what you're saying true?" Neven asked, trying to remain calm. "Are you really telling me the Lancer knows our location?"
Erindor Noved.
Yes. Neven, I may work for them, but I don't want everyone on this ship to die. Verican will reach us before your shields fail. They will destroy the sanctuary. The air in the command room froze. Ilara, horrified, looked at Neven. "Neven, if this is true." Neven leaned forward, placing his hands on the table. "We have no chance of escape. We need to find a way to stop that ship." Irinda took a hesitant step forward. "There is something that can stop it. The Dark Lancer is not just a ship. It's commanded by Verican's greatest general, Molech. Molech may seem immortal, but he has a weakness. If we can—" Neven closed his eyes, recalling a story he had heard long ago. "Molech is regarded as a demigod among the Verican," he thought, "empowered by the strength of a war god. Years ago, in an attack on the Dark Lancer, the only one who could stand against him was Irinda. But even he struggled to withstand Molech's powers. Molech's strength requires him to constantly maintain high energy levels. This means that while gathering his energy, he becomes vulnerable for a brief moment. It's the only way to weaken him, not physically, but mentally." Neven frowned, turning to Irinda. "A weakness?" "Yes," Irinda said, his voice trembling. "I can sneak aboard the Dark Lancer. Molech may seem like a war god, but if he focuses his energy on something, he'll be vulnerable for a moment. If I face him, I can distract him. During that time, you can infiltrate the ship and disable its main weapons. Why are you helping us? Ilara asked, astonished. Are you only now regretting your actions? Irinda stared at the ground. I made a mistake. I didn't know Verikan would destroy the entire alliance. I wanted my people to survive, but I've realized they won't gain anything by wiping us all out. Maybe this is the only way I can make things right. Nevan thought for a moment. He was still filled with rage, but they needed Irinda's sacrifice in this situation. If you do this, there's no coming back. You know that, right? Irinda lifted his head to meet Nevan's gaze. I know, but this might ease my regrets. Nevan took a deep breath. All right, then. We'll trust you. Once you disable the Dark Lancer's shields, we'll get inside and stop Molech. The plan was set into motion immediately. Irinda approached the Dark Lancer in a small infiltration vessel. Using his identity within the Verikan army, he transmitted the entry codes and successfully infiltrated the ship. As he made his way toward Molech's throne room, his heart raced. He encountered Verikan soldiers, but his former rank allowed him to pass without suspicion. Molech was seated on his throne in the enormous chamber, his power emanating through visible energy ripples, a demonstration of his might. A tall, armored figure. His arms radiated waves of energy that formed a lethal aura around him. As Irinda entered through the large doors, he struggled to loosen the knot in his throat. Molech! He called out. The Verikan general turned his head toward him. The red glow in his eyes sent chills down Irinda's spine. You! Irinda, Molech said in a cold voice. Why do you think you're here? Irinda took a deep breath. After the fall of Amaranth Base, the alliance is shattered. But the humans still refuse to stop fighting. This war won't end until they're completely destroyed. Molech smiled, but it was a cold, reptilian smile. And what do you suggest? I can lure them into a trap, Irinda said, suppressing the fear within him. If we distract them, they'll infiltrate the main ship. But to prove my loyalty to you, I'll strike first and destroy their main weapons. Molech narrowed his eyes. Interesting. But why should I trust you? Irinda silently raised his hand before Molech. Because I want Verikan to win. Molech pondered for a moment, then nodded. Very well. But if you fail to do what you say, I will destroy you with my own hands. Irinda bowed and left the chamber. The first phase of his plan was complete. Now, he moved to disable the ship's main weapons. Soon after, Nevan and his team infiltrated Dark Lancer. Fierce battles erupted with Verikan soldiers, the corridors filled with blood and fire. When Nevan reached a massive energy chamber, he found Irinda waiting for him. His face was covered in sweat, his hands trembling. The shields are down. Molech couldn't take his attention off me, but there's a window of opportunity. You've got one chance. Nevan frowned. What opportunity? Irinda took a deep breath. We have to lure Molech into a trap. If we don't stop him here, we're all dead. I have to make a sacrifice. Nevan hesitated for a moment. What are you planning? Irinda leaned in close to Nevan. I'll sacrifice myself to buy you time to escape. I'll lure Molech into this chamber and absorb all the energy. The chamber won't explode, but we can disable Molech for a while. During that time, the Alliance must attack Lancer. Nevan stared into his eyes. You don't have to do this. Irinda shook his head. No, I do. I want to pay the price for my betrayal. Win this war, Nevan. Nevan hesitated for a moment, but then nodded. We'll trust you, Irinda. I hope your sacrifice will truly make a difference. Irinda gave Nevan one final look before leaving the chamber to confront Molech. When Molech heard Irinda's call, he stormed into the massive energy chamber, filled with fury. Irinda stood defiantly in front of him one last time, gathering all his strength. He connected himself to the energy core, absorbing the entire chamber's energy. Molech, unable to control such an immense surge, stumbled to the ground. Irinda's body glowed with light, energy waves radiating outward, and a burst of light filled the room. But it wasn't an explosion, just a blinding flash. Molech was temporarily disabled. Nevin and his team seized the opportunity, disabling Dark Lancer's main weapons and escaping. The Alliance ships launched a full-scale attack on Dark Lancer, and with Molech disabled, they neutralized the ship. Irinda's sacrifice had changed the course of the war. When the battle ended, Nevin and Ilara stood in the now empty energy chamber. "He made sure we won by sacrificing himself," Ilara said quietly. "He paid the price for his betrayal." Nevin took a deep breath and nodded. Yes, he did. But his sacrifice may have saved not just this war, but the future of the galaxy. That day, the Alliance hailed Nevin Rook and his team for their great victory. But everyone would forever remember Irinda's sacrifice. The Dark Lancer was not destroyed, and Molech had escaped. But nothing would ever be the same again. The war was far from over, but hope had been rekindled. I hope you had a good time. If you liked my story, do not forget to comment and subscribe to my channel. Goodbye. See you in the next story.